will future generations say of us today? They built their cars so big, and they made their buildings tall. What could our children say of us? What mattered most of all? They knew how to serve and share, and life was so free and fair. Families together, man and wife who never wanted to part. They just lived the way they wanted the world to live, not demanding to get what they could, but only to give. And the millions flocked to their door, wanting to know, wanting to learn, wanting to buy. But it was free.
Hello, welcome to As We Want the World to Live. I'm your host, Michael Henderson, and our guests today are a very interesting couple from northeast India, Stanley and Helen Nichols-Roy. Stanley has been very active and still is in the political life of his country. He was for several sessions a member of the Assam legislature, and then when his own state, Meghalaya, received its autonomy in 1970, he joined the cabinet and had many portfolios there and served again in the Meghalaya Legislative Assembly. Today he's the General Secretary of the main regional political party in his area. Helen comes to the United States from Michigan and was a graduate in English from Vassar College. Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome you both here. I remember as a schoolboy, I don't know if it's true of American schoolboys, I remembered that Cherrapunji, which was in your constituency as a member of parliament, was the place with the highest rainfall in the world.
Legislature, not parliament.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Well, just terms, yeah. But we don't know a great deal more about northeast India, so perhaps you could start off by telling us a little bit about your part of the world.
Yeah. Well, I come from one of the small states which was created in 1970 as an autonomous state and subsequently as a completely separate state in 1972. But it is one of the areas known as the tribal areas of northeast India, and we have Khasis, who are one of the matrilineal tribes, and Garos, matrilineal tribe.
Perhaps if you could explain what matrilineal means.
Well, that's where the line of descent comes from the mother's side instead of from the father's side.
The ruler.
No, not the ruler.
What does that mean? No.
Well, the men rule, but the women control the property and the name. The descent comes through the mother's side.
And you're a Khasi?
I'm a Khasi. Yes. And my wife is wearing a Khasi jangsem, or a dress that one wears on special occasions, sometimes at weddings, sometimes at going to church or anything of that sort. But Meghalaya is a state which was created as a result of the struggle of the northeast people, the hill people of northeast India. And I was involved in that struggle because from 1960 I got involved in politics after my father died. He was a member of the cabinet of Assam, and he had been one of those who helped to frame the Constitution of India. But I never thought that I would get into politics. But after he died, some of my people came and asked me to represent them, and I got involved in politics and became the General Secretary of the party, the regional party of that area. And we struggled for many years to separate ourselves from Assam because we are a different type of people. There are many hill tribes in that region. But through this struggle for a separate state within the country, within India, I got involved with many experiences. I was actually a technocrat, was in business and in industry. And one of the places where I was trained was here in the United States as a student at the University of California.
What field?
Well, I was trained in food technology, actually, and then I studied for 2 years in engineering.
And is that
But-
where you met Helen?
Yes, I met
Yes.
her at the University of California at a football game, actually.
Oh, well, what impression did Stanley make on you? It must have been quite dramatic.
It was, and we were married in '49, left almost, well, within 2 months, we left for India on our real honeymoon. And I knew nothing of India. I had never been interested in India. And then suddenly here we were going, and he would not tell me anything about it, which I think was very wise, because then I had no preconceived notions when we arrived. We live up in the hills, about 5,000 feet. It's a little like Portland, because we have pine trees and all the same flowers and that sort of thing. And a beautiful climate. We do have these heavy monsoon rains, but not as much as Cherrapunji. And we've had 4 children since we lived there. They're all now in the United States. But we feel that this is a wonderful thing because we're having the best of both cultures, you might say.
Now, this American connection was not new, because I believe your mother was American.
Yes,
Right.
she came from the state of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. And she was given a call. In 1904, she came across to India as a missionary on faith that God called her. But the man who was responsible for inviting her was a colleague of my father's, who was in Calcutta at that time. And one of his colleagues came across to United States and spoke at a meeting somewhere in the Northwest. And a young lady, Nora Evelyn Nichols, responded and decided to go as a missionary to India. But before she did so, on the evening when she went to the altar to dedicate her life to serve God, she was given the thought that she should apologize to the man who had killed her father when she was about 8 or 10 years old. And she was brought up on a farm in Idaho, and a neighbor had shot her father. Well, this, of course, rankled for many years. And on the evening when she heard this message and decided to go as a missionary to India, this is what she had in her mind, that she could not give a message of love to India without apologizing for the hatred that she had for the man who had killed her father. So this was an influence in her life, and she was able to influence many, including my father, who went across and met her when she arrived in Calcutta, because she traveled with a couple of missionaries who had also responded to the call of
So
this
there was
colleague
no
of my
question of
father's.
them getting married then? Just,
No. She went over as a faith missionary, and they worked for 3 years with various people, including my father. And 1907 they got married, and I'm one of the results of that marriage.
Did you ever know her?
Oh, yes. We lived with them for the first 4 years. 3
Something
years,
like
4
that.
years.
So she must have helped you
So-
a bit to get into an Indian
Oh
situation.
my, yes. Although I moved into an American type of household, she helped me a lot. Of course, she knew the local language beautifully,
And do you
And-
speak Kasi?
somewhat.
Yes, she speaks
I
very
wouldn't-
well, actually.
It's modest about it.
No, but I never studied it. I just learned it by being with people and listening.
I think most of us have no idea that there are large Christian parts of India. I mean, we think of India as a Hindu country, then some large Muslim groups, but Christianity is quite strong in the
Well,
northeast.
in the hill areas of northeast India, the churches are quite strong, and in our state of Meghalaya, we have about 45 to 48% are Christian. In Mizoram, there's about 95%, and so on. There are different areas of northeast India where the hill people have become, a large number of them have become Christians. In the whole of northeast India, which includes Assam, which is the biggest state, we have about 1 million Christians out of about 15 million population of the
Now,
total
you
area.
have a border with Bangladesh, and of course they're
Yes.
Muslims. Was part of the problem of your culture, the people in that area feel their culture was going to be swamped partly because it was Muslim coming into Christian areas, or it was not a religious thing?
Well, it wasn't so much a religious thing as a population explosion that's going on all around Asia, and their area has more population per square mile than probably any part of Assam or any part of northeast India. And many of the people of Bangladesh have come across, infiltrated into Assam, into Meghalaya, into other areas for economic reasons. Of course, during the partition trouble between East Pakistan and West Pakistan, then a large number of refugees did come over. And that was just when our state was being created. And it was a great problem for us to take care of these refugees. 750,000 of them that poured into our state, not to speak of the huge millions that poured into West Bengal, Assam, and other places. But eventually they returned. Many of them, most of them returned when Bangladesh was created. But that infiltration still takes place.
I think the fear of the infiltration is also very much a political fear because they are afraid of domination by increasing numbers of outsiders coming in and taking over politically.
Do you find
and
that
economic problems too.
do you find that being a Christian is anyway a handicap, or is it a help in relations with Indians in general who are not?
No, it's not a handicap or help. It's just sometimes some people are suspicious because they're not sure of what the Christian stands. But there's nothing.
There's nothing in the Constitution. India is
no,
secular.
India is a secular state. And
partially because of my father-in-law.
Really?
Yeah.
He had a great part to
He had a
play.
part in the drafting of the
Yeah, he
Constitution.
drafted
Yes.
he helped to draft the Constitution, and that was one of the interesting parts of the Constitution which he had to battle to bring in this aspect, that freedom of religion, practice, profession, propagation of your own religion should be totally free and not be controlled, not be a state which there'd be a state religion. And this, I think, is a very, very good thing.
Now, you didn't expect to go into politics, and
Not
you
at
didn't
all.
expect to be a politician's wife.
No, not at all.
How have you found that?
Well, the first part of it was difficult. Because they were fighting for the Hill State, and it meant that the men must be away, particularly in Delhi, for months and months at a time, was a lonely thing. And one's bringing up small children, you want your husband to be there and so on. But after his visit to Panchgani in '68, there was a definite change, and
Well, now, I think that you brought up
paid more
Panchgani.
attention.
I don't think any of our listeners know what you mean by a visit to Panchgani,
well, this is a center for moral rearmament in western India, near Pune.
which must be what, 1,000, how many miles is it from you? 2,000?
Oh my, it's the other end of the country.
It's about 1,500
1,500 miles from.
Yeah, about almost 2,000 miles from
So
where we
it's
are.
a long trip.
Yes, it is that.
Yes. Well, do tell us about that place and what happened.
It's a beautiful center, and it was being built and completed in 1968. And in '67, my husband met friends of moral rearmament in Delhi, and they had invited him to go for the opening of this center. So he took a choir, as he said.
Because you were very
and
proud of your
went
singing up
to-
there in the
Well,
Northeast, I remember.
Yeah.
many people in Northeast India sing, and we learn singing from, when we are little fellows in church, in Sunday school, and everyone sings.
Yes, I was very sorry I didn't give you a bit of warning and a chance to practice. We could have heard a duet from you,
Oh,
because I
well,
know your
next
whole
time
family
maybe.
sings. Yes.
But I was interested when I heard friends who I met in Delhi at a dinner, Rajmohan Gandhi and other friends.
That's
Who-
the grandson of the Mahatma.
Yeah,
Yes.
grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, grandson of Rajagopalachari, the first Indian president of India. But I met for the first time with other friends, and he invited me to this opening of the Moral Rearmament Training Center, and he heard about our singing. I heard about the changes that had taken place in the world due to the work of moral rearmament, reconciliation between France and Germany because of 3 or 4 people who had started taking steps. I was very interested. So when we went back, we organized a choir, and Rajmohan came to Shillong to encourage me to really pursue that.
That's
and
the
we went.
capital of your state.
Yes, that's the capital of a state of Assam at that time. Now it's the capital of Meghalaya. And we went to Panchgani and found a marvelous experience. I, for the first time, was made to understand that a political leader like myself did have a role to play in changing the world, because I met a man named Kim Beazley, a member of parliament from Australia. I met a member of parliament from Scotland, Patrick Woolwich-Gordon, and these 2 men who had been fighting for moral standards, absolute moral standards in politics in Australia and in Scotland and in the United Kingdom, made me very interested. I met people from the trade union movement, I met farmers, I met Marxists, I met who were previously Marxists, all kind of people I met. And for the first time in my life, I saw an answer to the problems that I had faced in my life, in the situation in the political world, in the industrial world, which I had been a part of, and through changing persons, through individuals taking steps of change. And I was challenged. And I saw my role that, well, here's something that I did not need to be a preacher like my father was. Well, he was a preacher. God had called him to preach the gospel.
He was actually a clergyman.
He was
Yes.
a clergyman. And he was also led into industry, into politics. But because I was never called to be a preacher, I felt that, well, maybe I didn't have the role that he was called to do. But here I had met a group of people who, no matter who they were, they could still have a part in bringing the whole world under God's control, starting with themselves, and not just preaching to somebody else. But that made me very interested. And I needed to take a lot of changes, a lot of steps of change in my own life. So I took that decision. And
Now, Helen wasn't with you.
no, she wasn't. Only our daughter was with us. She was a good singer, and so she came with us. And we were there for about 7 days, and then went on to Delhi with Patrick Woolridge Gordon and saw the Republic Day parade in Delhi.
And
And
you
then
talk
he-
about changes. Did you notice any when he got
I
back?
certainly did. Yes, when he came back, I didn't know what he'd gone for. I knew nothing about moral rearmament or Panchgani or anything. And he came, even when he walked in the door, he was different. I can't explain it. But I could see his reaction to the family, the way he came, the things he talked about, everything was so different. I didn't know what had happened until he began to explain to me. And then it began to mean more and more to me. 2 or 3 days later, I began to think about it in relation to myself instead of just our relationship together. And gradually, I mean, his care for the family, his outlook on his own political situation, everything seemed to have changed. And what fascinated me was that a moral change inside had so much effect on all these things that were going on around us. I had seen the worsening relations between him and Chaliha, between him and the Assamese
Chaliha
leaders.
was the chief minister of the state.
Chief Minister of Assam, who they felt was the opposition, who was preventing their having the state that they wanted.
Well, we
And-
were struggling for the state to be carved out of Assam. We had decided for non-violence, but it was a long struggle. It was a frustrating struggle. And at one time, we were wondering whether many of our followers would go into violence. And this is what we did not want, because many other areas, many other states, as a matter of fact, most states carved out of others, were created only after a lot of violence. And we didn't want that. And we were pledged to non-violence, but we did not know how to bring about this change that was required in the political structure.
And they weren't speaking to the people from the other side. And they kept hoping that maybe just behind the scenes somewhere something violent would happen, which would force Delhi, make Delhi accede to their demands.
And so this
was
Panchgani
very
experience gave you, at least in relation to some of these people, a new attitude.
Yes, well, I realized that my blaming the Assamese, Chaliha, the leader, or the people in Delhi for not doing something enough for our hill people was not going to help. And I had to take steps in my own life, in our own party, in our own situation, to improve the relationship. And I also knew that it would be difficult to carve a state out of Assam without the cooperation of the Assamese if it was going to be non-violent and peaceful. And as a result of that change of attitude in my own relationship with BP Chaliha, we started working together and trying to find out the best way that we could work together to solve the problem, which had been for many, many years unsolvable. But it worked.
Well, as you know, I was in Meghalaya when you had
Yeah,
your
that's
independence
right.
celebrations, and Mrs. Gandhi came, and it was a great day. And I remember something which you
Not
made...
independence, that's the wrong
Well,
word.
your...
No.
The creation of the new
Yeah.
state.
New state,
Right,
excuse me,
right.
yes. But I remember something you may not remember. With all your new responsibilities, I don't know how many cabinet posts you had. It was
Well, there were only
3 or-
5 cabinet members at
You-
the
you had to
start
share
with.
responsibility
I had
for-
6 or 7
Yes.
or 8
Well, with all
portfolios.
these things that you were just taking office, your main concern, do you remember what it was?
I'd forgotten, I'm
It was the
sorry.
United States. You gathered together on the eve of independence all those present in the group I was with who knew anything about America, because you were really concerned about the United States, the way it was going, and how the relations between India and the United States could be improved. Obviously, it's something
No,
very much
that's-
on your heart. Is that something you'd like to touch on
Well,
now that you're back here?
Yeah, well, the thing is that I'd just come back from the United States because come here just after Christmas, 1969, 70 for 2 months, because I knew that would be the time when I would be free. And as soon as we went back, our autonomous state was created. And then I took responsibility. But having just come back to the United States and seeing the changes, I heard from, I remember one of the friends I'd met at the time, a French lady, Madame Irene Laure, who said, and the governor's, our governor, B.K. Nehru, his wife, mentioned that this idea of change, of bringing about a transformation in society, starting with ourselves, it's so important in America because it is the United States which has the power, apart from the military power, it has the ideas that is being spread through books, through television, through radio, the music, everything spreads out in the Western world at least. From
You
the
get
United
quite a bit
States.
of it into Assam, do you?
Oh yes,
yes.
it influences
Michael
the whole
Jackson
world.
there yet?
No, but many of our young people go for pop groups. I mean,
Yes.
they create
Yeah.
their own. It's a
It's a
pervading.
culture that is
Yes.
spreading all throughout the world. And to bring back the United States to that aspect, which I remember as a student at Calcutta, at the Presidency College, I always had the United States as a place where hope, freedom, the place where Lincoln was one of our big heroes in India. And we remembered the struggle that India went for independence. And
Because many Americans helped that struggle, didn't they?
Very much so.
sympathetic
Yes,
to it.
yes.
very much so. But in recent years, especially in 71, there was a change, the leaning to the dictators and many other things which happened. And I was concerned that America, which I was part of because my mother came from this country, my wife comes from this country, I was wanting to have that ideal which I was looking for, a country where in God we trust is still written on the money here. Well, this is what I was looking for, that this is the country which not only has the big bomb, but it has the best ideas that can influence and win the world to something great. And this is one of the reasons why I feel that it is one of the things which I look for, that people in this country remember their own heritage of what this country was built up for.
You must feel this too.
Oh, very much, yes. And it worries me sometimes that I see some of what I consider the less desirable features of American culture going overseas. And I yearn to see all the best things come out of America.
What are the best things? How would you enumerate them?
Honesty and a sense of justice and fair play, the traditional values. These are the things.
I think that one of the things that possibly you run into that Americans find difficult to understand is how a country can be a friend of the United States and still be non-aligned. I mean, there's a sort of feeling, well, if you're a friend, you've got to stand with us. And you're really a non-aligned country, aren't
Well,
you?
we are non-aligned so far as struggles of warfare is concerned. But I believe India has shown itself to be on the side of justice, on the side of truth, and we still remember one of the greatest leaders of the world, Mahatma Gandhi, who sought for truth, no matter where it was, and tried to show it to his enemy, to present his enemy, who at that time was Britain, holding India under its control, that they should learn to know how to deal with people under them. And this has influenced India a great deal.
I think the Gandhi film, has had a big influence in this country. You've seen that?
Oh yes.
Oh, my, yes.
Yeah,
That was you
I
liked the
think
portrayal?
We
was
liked it very much.
much.
Yes.
Yeah.
We felt it was very...
There's one thing I'd like to mention, which when I come to this country with young children, growing children, we used to go to Disneyland. And there's one place in that Disneyland which has impressed me. The feature about Abraham Lincoln. And here you see this man getting up and giving a speech. And he says, this country can never be destroyed from outside armies. It can only be destroyed from within. And I see that every time I come from year to year, sometimes within 2 years, sometimes after 5 or 6 years, that the moral disintegration in a country can come only from within. And the battles that happen, whether it's in India or in America, it's really the moral battle that a man has to overcome to be the best that he's meant to be. And this is what I look for in the United States, that we remember those wonderful qualities that the world used to admire in the United States.
Because there's a very common factor which we sometimes forget, that we're both democracies, and in fact India is the world's largest democracy.
Oh, that's right.
And in fact I think Indians could put us to shame in the way you turn out at elections, isn't that
Well,
true?
there are some places where about 85-90% of the
Yes.
people vote. And there are others, by-elections, maybe only 40-45%. But certainly our people have been democratic even before the word democracy probably was taught in the schools. Our tribal people, the hill people, are very
Yes.
democratic in their village organizations and so on.
Nehru mentioned this when he visited the Khasi Hills. He said that this is the real grassroots democracy, and they've had it long before the rest of India.
I know you're on a private visit and you can't comment on perhaps some of the more hot political issues in the country at the moment, but are you optimistic that despite all the pulls between various parts of the country, the threats of trying to secede or something, are you hopeful of India's future?
Yes, I have no doubt about India's future so far as that's concerned. Their leaders will come and go, but democracy has been well established. And there was a time when they thought, Nehru had gone, after Nehru who, after Nehru what? But changes have taken place. Individuals have come, individuals have gone, but the basic structure of the country of India is well founded because our constitution is well based. And we change our constitution from time to time when necessary.
Do you have a final word for America?
Well, I think it's an individual point. I have come to realize how very important to people abroad is the quality of life of the individual American. And I would also like to say that I think it was very important that Americans should come to India and learn.
Well, I would like to say that we should consider these two large democracies as friends, and we may not always agree on all issues, but we should be real friends.
Well, thank you very much for that note. We wish you all the best as you head back to India.
Thank you very much.
Thinking of others too in this area, and a little bit of the history of more Re-Armament. And I was thinking of Peter Howard because he was here at a conference that was held quite a number of years ago, but at the instigation largely of Bob Scholes and others. And then, of course, this brings us up to the date